In this fascinating discussion, the conversation revolves around the future of China and its potential impact on the global economy, particularly in terms of commodity prices. Peter Zeihan explores China's demographic collapse and its effect on the country's position in the world, as well as recent political developments that have shaken the Chinese Communist Party. The conversation also touches on Apple's supply chain and how the tech giant may be affected by the upheaval in China. Furthermore, Zeihan discusses Mexico's increasing importance as a trading partner for the United States, especially given the current situations in China. With the global economy at stake, this engaging dialogue offers valuable insights into the political ramification of China's ongoing crisis and the opportunities for other nations to capitalize on these shifts.
So either way, what you're predicting, what I'm hearing you say, is that China is facing a precipitous fall either way they go, and that is going to have ramifications across the global economy because it's so important in terms of supply chains, demand for oil. I mean, could this result in a global recession or global crash, and particularly in commodity prices because of China's role as a massive consumer of everything from crude to tin and aluminum?
Well, I mean, to set China aside for just a second,
yeah,
so many things are going wrong all at the same time. As soon as we got to the end of the Obama years and it was clear that the Americans were done maintaining globalization, first Trump, now Biden, we've always known we were going to get here. And on the China relationship, we've always known we were going to get here, whether it was because of ethics or genocide or jobs or trade security or intellectual property theft or fascism or racism, whatever method you want to use to evaluate. We've always known that the bilateral relationship was going to collapse, whether it was going to be because of something on our side, something on their side, something in between. We always known it was going away. And we've always known that China was going to go away. Their demographics are the most terminal on the planet and in history. The birth rate in Shanghai and Beijing are the lowest ever recorded, and they just got revised down another 20% in the last 2 months. We now have a birth rate in China that in the last 6 years has dropped by 70%. And the Chinese are now admitting that they overcounted their population by over 100 million people, and all the missing millions are under age 40. So this was already a country in full demographic collapse that was going to cease to exist this decade. Everything that's happening now with Xi and COVID is just on top of that.
Well, let me ask you specifically about this recent event, because I've watched it many times, and to me, and I've talked about it with some other people, but it was at the Communist Party Congress, and they escorted Hu Jintao out of the building, right?
Yeah.
And I watched it so I don't know, 10, maybe 15 times, because reading the facial gestures and reading how dismissive Xi was of Hu, and Hu's own kind of surprise that, wait, what is happening here? And it was a purge in real time on television, right? How significant was that? Because I thought there's a movie script just to be written just in that 2 minutes of video. I thought I was just riveted by it. How did you receive that?
Well, let me give you the quick background so you can understand the significance.
Okay.
After Mao's disaster and the Cultural Revolution and the broad-scale destruction that generated, Deng Xiaoping was brought in, and he basically helped put the pieces together and came to a working agreement with the United States to join the globalized system. And as he was in his final years as ruler, he selected 2 relatively middle-of-the-road bureaucrats who were technocrats from different factions to succeed him. First, it was Deng Xiaoping. No, wait. Sorry, it's been a while. Jiang Zemin. Wow, sorry. I just got done talking to a different audience, so I've got different facts in my head. Jiang Zemin, and then Hu Jintao. And so they both ruled for 10 years. Jiang is from Shanghai, Hu is from the Beijing area, different factions, different geographies. The whole idea was to get a balance. But back when he did this, Deng knew that he couldn't look forward enough to figure out who was going to be there for the next 10 years. So he left it those 2 factions that he did choose to select who the compromise candidate would be for number 5. And that ended up being Xi. So when Xi comes in, he recognizes that he's a compromise candidate, and he feels the need to break both factions as well as all of the others to make sure that no one can challenge him. So he called it an anti-corruption campaign effort that dominated his first 5-year term, in which he got rid of everybody he saw as problematic. And then in the second 5 years, he went after the factions themselves to make sure that they could not function independently of him. And in this, Hu Jintao was broadly supportive. And by the time we got to the third party Congress last month, he was the only one left. And so the symbolism of taking somebody who actually supported you, but was the last semi-independent pole of power within the entire system, and publicly melon scooping them from the political discourse, that was powerful. And it started what has now become a race among the sycophants within the current government of who can prove themselves to be more loyal. And as a result, we are seeing policy collapses across the entire political system. And COVID is just one representation of that. We're seeing this in relations with Russia, in relations with the United States. We're seeing this in the power sector. We're seeing it in the financial sector. We're seeing it in housing. I mean, the whole system is shaking apart. And I got to admit, it's kind of entertaining to watch.
Entertaining, but damn scary, isn't it? I mean,
totally scary, but I don't live in China.
So Peter Zeihan has analysed and shared his insights on the current situation in China, emphasising the precarious position the country finds itself in. With a cult of personality systems led by Xi Jinping, China is either headed towards a complete collapse or a rigid lockdown that stifles economic growth. As the country grapples with the demographic crisis, events like the recent public purge of former leader Hu Jintao reveal the instability within the political sphere. Zeihan suggests that China's potential fall could have significant consequences for the global economy, with impacts on supply chains, commodity prices, and the potential for a worldwide recession.
Well, and I want to come back to why you're bullish on the U.S. I am as well. In my last book, my fifth book, I talk about why the U.S. has so many advantages, right? Geographic, demographic, et cetera. We'll come back to that. But just cast this forward in terms of commodities, and because China has been such a massive absorber of every kind of commodity around the world and a massive exporter of labor-intensive goods, including Apple iPhones. What does this mean for Apple? Let's start with them.
Oh, well, Apple's totally screwed in the midterm. Apple is the American company that has refused to see the writing on the wall. And every time there has been a hiccup in relationships, whether it's the trade fight starting under Obama, getting serious under Trump, getting codified under Biden, whether it's warrior wolf diplomacy, genocide, Hong Kong, whatever it happens to be, Apple has doubled down. And now 91% of their supply chain is dependent upon mainland China in some way. And so we are looking at Apple as an institution, as a firm, ceasing to have a product set for several years until they can rebuild that supply chain somewhere else. Now, if this had been a normal company, I would say that this would be the end of the firm, but Apple has like $18 bajillion saved up right now. They can afford to go out and rebuild their supply chain in other places, but that's not something you do in 2, 3, or 4 years. So we're probably done with iPhones until around 2028.
Say that again.
It's going to take them 5 to 6 years to rebuild the supply chain system.
And so there were some of these demonstrations were focused right around Foxconn, which was their biggest supplier, right? And Apple was trying to quell this, and
there's a reason why Tim Cook is not saying anything about this, because there's nothing he can say that can fix this. They just need to rebuild the entire manufacturing supply chain elsewhere, almost completely from scratch.
And we're talking about the most valuable. Well, I don't know whether Saudi Aramco, what their market cap is, but we're talking about the most valuable company in the world here.
Yeah. They screwed up badly.
To conclude today's episode, the recent events in China, including the Communist Party Congress incident, symbolize a powerful shift and the weakening of the Chinese system. This is causing policy collapses and shaking up various sectors, which will have significant global implications. Apple, for example, is heavily reliant on China for its supply chain and will likely face major disruptions as a result. On the other hand, Mexico is emerging as an increasingly important trading partner for the US, with a highly skilled workforce and valuable manufacturing sector. The renegotiated NAFTA has further solidified Mexico's position in the global economy. As China experiences tectonic problems, Mexico's importance will likely continue to grow, while the US benefits from a process of reindustrialization.